Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. I'm Raffi, joined by Davian. Davian, the NFL playoffs are about to begin this upcoming weekend. I am very excited because I don't know how many more weeks of regular season football I could personally watch. Thankfully, the Falcons are not in the playoffs. Now, I know you must be like, what do you mean? Don't you root for the Falcons? Yes. And that's why I'm happy they're not in the playoffs right now because they're Penix has been really solid. The offense looks better as of late, but
Yeah.
the Falcons are the Falcons. And for my mental toll, I will be moving my attention to the Blackhawks, who like to embarrass themselves constantly by getting blown out on national television. So I'm doing great. Davian, your New England Patriots, I'll just hand it off to you. They made a head coach firing
Oof.
yesterday, so I'll give you the
Yeah.
floor if you want to discuss that. And I'll also just mention, too, once again, that the Patriots did not get 5 wins this year, as we had that friendly wager. I will do my quick victory lap and say, I was right. You were wrong.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I need to address something as a Patriots fan because I think one thing that a lot of people don't know is the dysfunction that was going on within the Patriots locker room. I need to look up this guy's name. This random linebacker who's uh just absolutely terrible and
Just in the
timeout.
meantime, I'm just surprised that they got rid of Mayo after 1 year. It was like he was hyped up as like, okay, like he's been handpicked, he's been ushered along by the Patriots. So when he's ready to be when Belichick steps away, he will be the head coach. 1 year goes by, nope, we're done. Moving on to the next guy.
Yeah.
We're not keeping him, which was just really crazy. It just shows how bad things were, I guess, with the Patriots. But
Yeah, it
continue.
really is, and I'm out of my timeout right now. So Johnny Tave, like I don't even know how to pronounce his name because at the end of the day,
Teve,
this
maybe.
guy he wasn't a good player on the field whatsoever. He was one of the worst linebackers on the field in general. Like he had some good plays here and there, but what this guy said, saying that calling out the fans and then Gerard Mayo really saying like, "Oh, we're dealing with it internally," and then for him to come out and double down saying, "Oh, Patriots fans should be grateful." What should we be grateful for? 6 years of no playoffs. What is there to be happy about? I mean, honestly, it was insane to see how quickly Mayo lost control of this locker room and what these Patriots players have been saying as if we're some NBA locker room. It is despicable. It was heartbreaking after seeing years and years of the Belichick era where we even yes, of course players are pissed. I mean, we see it now with players speaking out, but never ever did players speak out about the situation within the locker room. Even in the days where we did even worse than I feel like this year, never did I see anything like it, and it's shameful to see. And don't get me wrong, I think Patriots fans should also recognize Gerard Mayo is a Patriots legend. He led the Patriots to the Super Bowl. He was a captain of this defense and the defense that helped win the Patriots the Super Bowl. And we as Patriots fans should always be grateful for everything he's done as a player, but he was not a good head coach. He lost control of the locker room, and that's why he got fired. It wasn't anything to do with race. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was because simply he lost control of the locker room. The veterans, players did not believe in him, and there's one guy out there who's staring at the head coaching job and who's been wanting to come back and who's more of a legend in some ways than Gerard Mayo, even though I don't think we should compare them, and that's Mike Vrabel. I, as a Patriots fan, want Mike Vrabel back, and for multiple reasons why I want him over Ben Johnson. One, Ben Johnson he's a hothead right now. He thinks that he's the guy and he knows everything. And don't get me wrong, this guy's gonna help. This guy might lead the Lions to the Super Bowl this year, and he's helped create a offensive juggernaut with Jared Goff as the quarterback. I think that speaks a lot of volume. Yes, Jared Goff is a great quarterback, but he's nowhere near elite level that Patrick Mahomes is. But one thing is that he brings just complete institutional change that I don't think this Patriots organization needs right now. We need stability. And that I think is what Mike Vrabel provides. And that's what I want to see. Um, so, I'm I was shocked to see how quickly he got fired, but I was not shocked to see that he was fired. That's what I'll say.
Got it. And the Patriots' future does kind of look bright. They have Joe Milton as the future quarterback for the Patriots, so that's obviously great. And then they have the first overall pick. I mean, they have the fourth overall pick, so
Oh my God.
they'll get a good player.
I can't believe you won that game. I mean, like, look, I'm not. I hate tanking, Rafi, and like how much I hate tanking. We've gotten so many rants. Like, this is our third year almost doing this podcast, third year,
This is now
and
year 3 as of
year
like 2
three,
weeks
right?
ago. Yeah.
We've spoken so many times about how tanking is bad, and while watching this Bills game, I was very happy to see Joe Milton do well. But the fact we went from the first to fourth pick, it's kind of disappointing. But I'm very happy to see that we have a great backup quarterback, and the future is very bright.
Yep.
But
Drake May will do a great job holding the clipboard,
yeah,
as you just said. So let
Rafi,
it be
before
known
we
that
jump into the
yeah.
playoffs, because I know that's what we're going to be talking about for most of this podcast, I have to ask you as a Falcons fan, right? What do you want to do with Kirk Cousins now? He comes back from his injury, he recovers. Are you trying to trade him away and go full on in with Penix? Have you seen enough that you want Penix to be your franchise QB? Or are you trying to keep Cousins around a bit longer because of the massive contract that he signed with him?
I think the best thing to do would just be to hold on to him for this upcoming season. I know it's not great. He's due a $10 million, I think it was injury clause or injury bone, whatever. Like, he's due $10 million after March 7th, which is technically the end of the league year for the season. So I'm honestly open to just holding on to Kirk Cousins. I don't think it's a bad thing. Worst case, I I think part of why he looks so rusty, and it's crazy too, because again, he had such a great October, which was also dubbed as Kirktober, and for him to fall off that he did was kind of shocking. But I do think part of it still he's recovering from a very traumatic injury, an Achilles injury. So I
Yeah.
think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think it's good to have a little bit of a quarterback battle as well. So keep Cousins for another year. Then it's a little easier for the Falcons to cut ties with Kirk Cousins after the following season. And you're not saving any money anyways if you cut him now. So to me personally, it just makes no sense. I think the big thing for the Falcons is to go and get an edge rusher with the first round pick. If the Falcons leave the draft without taking a edge rusher in the first round, everyone in that front office, even the owner, should be fired. I'm so, like, you cannot continue to push this off. Last year, in years past, I was able to understand it, and they've hit on those picks. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, great picks. Michael Penix Jr., I'm open to it. I'm fine right now. Jury's still out, but I'm fine with it. If the Falcons come out of this first round without an edge rusher, I think the entire city of Atlanta and myself might collectively crash out. They need an edge.
Yeah.
Judon, I love the red sleeves. I know you love him a lot from his time with the Patriots.
Of course I do,
He's
yeah.
not that guy anymore. Unfortunately,
He's not. He's
he
really
didn't
not.
have a
I'm
good
sorry.
year
Like, I've
this
not
past
seen
year.
him perform well.
And to most Falcons fans, the red sleeves was like, okay, like, oh, he's existing. That's how I know he's on the field. But aside from that, like, he wasn't creating any pressures. He wasn't sacking the quarterback. And for a team that's been devoid of sacks for years, you have to spend a premier pick on an edge rusher this year. That's all I got to say right now. I don't want to go too deep into this rant because we're going to have plenty of time in the off season, although that'll be college basketball, hockey, other sports season. But we'll get into it more as we get closer to the NFL draft. But yeah, I think you hold on to Kirk Cousins. I don't think it kills you. It's not going to help you anyways if you cut him and give him the benefit of the doubt that it's the injury that's kind of been the main thing for why he sucked for a decent amount of time, and go get an edge rusher in the draft or else. I don't know what that or else clause will be. It's not a threat, but just please get an edge rusher and use your first round pick to get an edge rusher. There's many great options this year for edge rushers in that range. Let's move on now to the playoffs because we can still talk about all the head coaches that have been fired as well, all the GMs, and that can be a whole podcast. But right now, let's focus on the NFL playoffs because the playoffs are starting shortly, and we'll have plenty of time to digest all the other shakeups from coaching, general manager, teams, etc. going forward. And a lot of these decisions will be made after some teams are eliminated from the playoffs because their coordinators will be likely taking new jobs. So let's dive in. We're going to both give our wildcard predictions, then we're going to lean into our AFC and NFC championship predictions, and then also give obviously our Super Bowl prediction. So we'll start off with the first game, and as is tradition, the Texans are playing at 3:30 on a Saturday Central Time, and that's just how things have been for the Texans. I think they played every single game. Every single playoff game the Texans have had in their franchise history has been at 3:30 on Saturday. So I'm all for it. But Davian, Chargers, Texans, I've gone on numerous times saying the Chargers are cursed. They're not going to do well. The Chargers are cursed. I can't pick them. The Texans have been so bad offensively, and CJ Stroud has just been brutal this year. He's taking a big step back, and Joe Mixon has been non-existent the second half of the season, where I'm going to go against what I have been saying. I can't imagine the Chargers somehow charging this game. I have the Chargers being the Texans. If the Chargers lose to the Texans, I'm not going to pick the Chargers ever again. They can go undefeated. I'll still pick them to lose their first matchup in the playoffs. I think the Chargers have just been much better, and at the end of the day, the Texans have just been awful this year. I don't know what it's been, but they've just been terrible. I think part of that's with Diggs being out for the year. They lost him. They lost Collins for 6-7 weeks, but even with Collins back, the Texans have just been an utter disaster. David, who do you have in this game?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the Texans also lost Tank Dell, and I feel like, look, I watched this Chargers team play the Patriots, and I was scared for Drake May. Just their blitz packages that they have created are insane. I mean, led by Bosa, that defense is scary, and if Stroud can't avoid, if the Texans offensive line can't pick up on those blitzes, Stroud is going to get pummeled. And don't get me wrong, Stroud is a great, great quarterback, but he won't be able to escape that. Second thing I'll add is that this Chargers offense is very, very good, led by, of course, the star rookie wide receiver, Lad McConkey. And another thing that I believe is a concern is the Texans linebacker and just the middle of the field defense, which I saw the Chargers really exploit the Patriots for that, and I feel like that's something the Chargers can do to the Texans. And so it is a tough game, but as you were saying, Rafi, the Texans haven't been playing well, and I felt like the Texans-Ravens game was very representative of what we're going to see this week. No, I don't think the Chargers are as good as the Ravens, and you'll kind of see that prediction later on when I say this as a kind of foreshadowing. But I will say that both teams are very similarly structured in terms of their defense, and that's why I think that this Texans team is going to win. So to go more in depth into why this Chargers team is going to win, and that's why to go more into depth into what you were saying. But again, yeah, I do agree that Chargers have been cursed for years. I know, Rafi, this is your favorite quote to say that the Chargers are cursed. I feel like even before the season starts, you just, this is your go-to.
You say that because it's literally what I've said the past couple of years, and I was right about that Jaguars Chargers game. That was a beautiful. I don't get a lot of things right, but that was my Super Bowl prediction last year. That was also dead on. So I do have my moments, shockingly. But yeah, I'll just finish off too with the fact that I trust Jim Harbaugh so much more than Brandon Staley as head coach of the Chargers. Like, if Brandon Staley was still the head coach, I would have a much tougher time. But with Jim Harbaugh,
this is
more
Harbaugh.
safer.
He's a mastermind of a coach. I will have to say that as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the Chargers as mentioned previously. Moving on to the Saturday night game, we have the Steelers and the Ravens in a divisional matchup. The Steelers beat the Ravens mid-November 18-16. The Ravens 3 weeks ago beat the Steelers 34-17. The Steelers have Russell Wilson looked really good. Sorry to go on a tangent, but Russell Wilson looked really good when he stepped in. But as of late, the Steelers' offense has just been not good at all. Yes, they put up 45 points against the Bengals. I will go against that point by saying they put up 45 points against the Bengals, who defensively are terrible. Their DC just got fired, I believe. Yeah. So the Steelers, 13 points versus the Eagles, 17 points versus the Ravens, 17 points versus the Bengals, 10 points against the Chiefs. It's literally TJ Watt. That's all the Steelers have
Yeah.
become. George Pickens is becoming he's living his Antonio Brown life, becoming a diva for the Steelers. He's likely going to get traded soon.
Yeah.
Give me the Ravens. Lamar Jackson is going to tear apart the Steelers defense. I don't think this game's going to be close.
Yeah, I mean, look, this Ravens team has been on fire as of late, and the Steelers team is entering the playoffs with very little momentum and having to play in a Baltimore environment. It's going to be very, very difficult for the Steelers team to win. Give me the Ravens as well, led by, arguably you can say, potential MVP in Lamar Jackson. And I know we will get into our MVP picks kind of later on, once as the playoffs continue. But there's a very, very strong case that Lamar Jackson should be MVP, and this Ravens team is just very, very well built together. And I'll get into that more as we continue this conversation.
Yeah, moving on. Next game to start the day on Sunday. It's Bills Broncos. I'll be talking about the Bills a decent amount in this podcast just to do some foreshadowing on where I think this Buffalo team is going to be going. We'll see how far, but that's for the end of the podcast. This is your time now if you want, where you can skip the next 15 minutes of us talking about everything else and just skip to that. But we'd like for you to hang out for the leading up portion. But yeah, foreshadowing, I'll be talking about the Bills a couple times. So I'll keep it short. I like the Broncos. They've had a great bounce back year. They weren't expected to do anything this past year. I think I had them as a 4-5 win team, and they've really impressed. Bo Nix, after a couple first weeks of being pretty rough and being a rookie quarterback, he's really come into his own and put together a pretty solid season. That being said, the Buffalo Bills are the Buffalo Bills. So I have the Bills, but I don't want that to take away from the fact that the Broncos had a really good year, and they should feel achieved. And I think it's a good building block going forward for that team. But it's the
Yeah,
Bills.
absolutely. I mean, they found their franchise QB finally in Bo Nix, and I believe he should be Rookie of the Year. And I feel like a lot of people agree with that as well. And so I like this Broncos team, but I'm sorry, give me the Bills. This Bills team has been absolutely on fire lately. I believe I personally think Josh Allen should be the MVP, and I feel like his performance has spoken for itself. And you're playing in Buffalo, man. Just give me the Bills. I don't feel like we need to talk about that a lot more.
Yep. Moving on, Packers Eagles. This was the matchup that I specifically was pretty torn on, just because I talked a lot about the Packers a couple weeks ago. I talked about Toyota Thunder, Jordan Love, and it's you would think that I was going to pick the Packers in this matchup, but the past couple weeks the Packers have looked a little shaky. I've been a little concerned about them. Yes, they had a couple good games versus the Saints where they absolutely blew the doors off them,
Yeah.
but they didn't really impress me too much versus the Vikings. They didn't impress me enough versus the Bears, especially Jordan Love as well. He hasn't, especially the back half of the season, there's not many games where he's thrown for over 300 passing yards. There's not many games where he's thrown for 2-3 touchdowns. He hasn't really taken over many games. He's shown that he's capable of doing that, especially early on in the year. But right now, I'm kind of a bit low on Jordan Love, and the Eagles' defense has just been insane this year. They have they're the only team in the NFL to allow fewer than 5,000 yards. Vic Fangio has done a great job with this defense. That was a big concern last year for them. They're doing great with takeaways. They've allowed the second lowest amount of points this year at only 18 points allowed per game. And you look through the stats on their defense. Their defense has been absolutely phenomenal. They're forcing fumbles, forcing turnovers, and Saquon Barkley's just been incredible this year. So I have the Eagles being the Packers, going against my couple weeks ago rant about how the Packers could go on a deep run. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go against what I said, and I have the Eagles being the Packers.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. I mean, look, this Eagles, I've seen this Eagles team play, and they're an absolute juggernaut from head to toe. Saquon Barkley in the backfield, a record breaking, an almost record breaking season. If the Eagles actually would have let him play, Jalen Hurts has continued to develop to be he is one of the most elite quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Their wide receiver core, led by AJ Brown, is absolutely amazing, and as you were saying, their defense has really stepped up compared to last year. And so I'm gonna have to take the Eagles as well. They kind of the team speaks for itself and their performance.
Yeah, I'll throw over Commanders Tampa Bay over to you in a moment, but I'll also mention too there's a little bit of concern where it's like Jalen Hurts concussion protocol. Is he playing? He hasn't practiced as of recording this podcast on Tuesday. So what's
Right.
kind of going on
Yeah.
there? Is he going to play? And that will dictate obviously how far the Eagles go. If they're starting their backup quarterback, then this game is completely changed. I'm picking the Packers, but the Eagles did
I
waive
wouldn't
Ian
be
Book
that quick, man.
earlier today. So the fact that they waived Ian Book, who is I want to say their third quarterback right now on their roster, at least right now, to me personally, means that Jalen Hurts will be playing and clear concussion protocol by Sunday when they play the Packers. So with that information of them waiving Ian Book, I feel better about Jalen Hurts' health status. Yes, he hasn't played in once that game happens 2 weeks, but I think the Eagles will be fine, especially I'm anticipating Jalen Hurts is healthy and ready to go with that news earlier today. Moving on, I'll give you an opportunity to take the first shot at Tampa Bay versus the Commanders as a rematch of a couple years ago, where Taylor Heineke was an elite quarterback. We all remember the Taylor Heineke insanity run, but I'll hand it over to you now. What are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to come out of this matchup?
Yeah, I really, really like this Commanders team and what they've put together with Jaden Daniels. And, we talked about Rookie of the Year, and I'm so sorry I put disrespect on Jaden Daniels' name and not saying that he should win Rookie of the Year. I almost forget sometimes that he's a rookie because he's been playing so well. But it's his first playoff game, and I feel like that needs to be said. Rookies struggle in their first playoff games when the lights are the brightest. I don't think that Jaden Daniels will be able to step up. With Marshawn Lattimore, no, he's not as great as he was, but with the amount of blood that he has out uh, for Mike Evans,
Mike
might make this
Evans. I'm
a more
glad. I'm glad
competitive
you
game. I
mentioned
think.
that.
I feel like that needs to be said. He has blood out for Mike
Absolutely.
Evans, and so that will make it a bit more competitive. But with Bucky Irving in the backfield for Tampa Bay, I mean, this Tampa Bay team has played very, very well, and so I feel like this game could go either way. And originally, I did have written down I'm going to take the Commanders, but I'm going to have to take Tampa Bay. They're just too good of a team, I think.
Yay. Love that you changed your mind. I have the Commanders. Terry McLaurin
Really?
and Jaden Daniels' connection has been amazing this season. Love it for my fantasy team, although we
Yeah,
unfortunately
yeah,
lost
yeah.
by
Of
1.2
course.
points. We don't need to talk about that anymore than I've already discussed. But this team offensively has been playing really well. Yes, the inevitable Dan Quinn coaching gaffe is going to happen at some point for this team. Don't get me wrong, it's the playoffs now. But I know what people are saying. Oh, it's a rookie quarterback. Oh, this, oh, that. I I trust Jane Daniels in this matchup. I'm going to take Jane Daniels. Tampa Bay, that's a great defense, as we know. Baker Mayfield has been solid, but he hasn't been anything amazing the past couple of weeks. I'm going to go with the Commanders over the Buccaneers. Moving on, and I'll hand this one over to you as well. Another intriguing matchup: Rams Vikings. Who do you have winning?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one because especially given that the Vikings lost the Rams before, and it's the same matchup, and it's in LA again. But I'm gonna have to take the Vikings because at the end of the day, this Rams team has really brought. They're the one thing that's really pushing them forward is Puka Nacua and Williams and I just Kyron Williams, and I just don't see them really playing that well. I think that the Vikings are going to figure out a formula on how to stop them, especially after they lost to them after they combined for 227 yards from the scrimmage in the last game that they played together. So I think the Vikings are going to have a formula ready to stop this LA Rams team. And I think that, yes, I know the Vikings are coming off a pretty disappointing loss last week. And I know that they didn't look that great against the Lions, but I they're 14 and 3 for a reason, and I think they're going to show that this week. And so I'm going to have to take the Vikings.
Yeah, the Vikings defense has also just been remarkable, and I
Yeah,
originally myself had the
I
Rams
agree.
winning
Yeah,
this matchup, and that was just so with a lot of these predictions, I just make my picks and then I look at stats, I review everything, and say, okay, like then I pushed myself on, do I really think this team's going to win? Do I think this team's going to win? I originally had the Rams winning, and I had the Rams going pretty far, actually. Originally, my first mock up in my mind of like, okay, I think the Rams
Really?
should go on a deep run. But
Wow.
I looked at, we're scratching this past week for Seattle because it was primarily Rams backups, and I'm not going to, that game doesn't mean anything in my
And the
mind
Rams
at all.
backups did played very well in general as well.
Oh
So
yes, absolutely. But the backups
yeah,
are going to be playing versus the Vikings. At least, hopefully they
yeah.
don't, because I hope everyone on the Rams is healthy. But I'm looking at the last 3 games that the Rams played with their starters. They beat the Niners 12-6. We all remember that. That was killed so many people's fantasy seasons. The following week versus the Jets 19-9, and then versus the Cardinals Saturday night. Thank God I didn't watch any of these games. The Rams won 13-9. And if this was mid-season or earlier in the year with Puka Nacua being out, I'd say, okay, you know what? They're missing Puka Nacua. I get it. Like, it's fine. But the way the Rams offense has been the past couple of weeks has just been absolutely putrid. Yes, I know that right before this 3-week stretch that I was talking about, they put up 44 points and beat the Bills. It just seems like the offense has completely disappeared for the Rams. And with a very blitz heavy team in the Vikings, a very smart mind in Kevin O'Connell, I have to go with the Vikings here. The Rams have just, I really wanted to pick the Rams, but I'm looking at this 3 week stretch and I'm saying I think that is worse than the Vikings, how the Vikings looked versus the Lions this past week,
Yeah, I
personally,
mean,
at least in my
Rafi,
mind.
I think you nailed it. You nailed it on the head. Really, I think that there's a lot to be said about momentum.
100%. All right, let's move into our NFC and AFC conference championship predictions. In the AFC, oh boy. Last year, I was boring, and boring paid off quite nicely as I had the Chiefs and Niners in the Super Bowl. This year, we're having a little bit of fun. I have the Bills versus the Eagles in the Super Bowl. I have the Bills beating the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. I have the Lions losing to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. The end of the day, we'll start off with the NFC. Again, I said it earlier, this Eagles defense has been on another level this year. Jalen Hurts, for all the people saying, like, all the haters, all the doubters, has put together a really good year. And Saquon Barkley is just insane. He's going on an absolute insanity run. He's gone on a tear this past season, and I still can't believe the Giants got rid of him. Maybe that's on Miss Theodore to come back onto the podcast, which he might be on soon. But anyways, this Eagles team has just been really good down the stretch. I've bought in. I'm drinking the Sirianni is not a complete idiot juice, and I have the Eagles being the Lions, and then the Bills Chiefs. I got burned on this. I got burned on this 2 years ago, but I just think this is Josh Allen and the Bills' year, and that is simply just why I have the Bills being the Chiefs. The Chiefs have the dark magic. The Bills are also a team that's been very cursed, but you can flip a coin, and also too, game of the entire playoffs is going to be Bills Ravens. That's going to be an amazing matchup, and I think whoever wins that game represents the AFC in the Super Bowl. So once again, I have Bills over Chiefs, and then I have Eagles over Lions.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to completely disagree with that. Well, yeah, actually, completely disagree with that. One, this Chiefs team has like, yes, they've looked much better than they have earlier on in the season, but this Chargers team is really being discounted, and I think what they've
Oh
put
no, not
together
this
at the
again.
end of the season has been absolutely electric, no pun intended. And so I think this Chargers team beats Kansas City but then
Wow.
lose to Baltimore Ravens. Because I also think that the Baltimore Ravens, offensively and defensively, have looked way better than the Bills. And the reason why I think Josh Allen should win the MVP is because the offensive makeup of the Bills is much worse than the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have a Pro Bowler in Zay Flowers, who I don't think should be a Pro Bowler, but either way, he is a Pro
Zay
Bowler.
Flowers is the Pro Bowler?
Yes, he is a Pro Bowler. Yeah, I'm just as shocked as you are, Rafi.
I
Brian
didn't
Thomas
even know.
Jr. was not even
Can you
considered,
tell
even
I
though
haven't
he had
been paying any
an amazing
attention
year as
to
a
any of the
rookie.
Pro
But
Bowl stuff?
hopefully, the All Pro, really kind of that steps up because I think also in the Pro Bowl, Travis Kelsey had the most votes because of course he did. Um, all those Swifties and whatnot. No disrespect to Swifties, I'm a Swifty myself, but uh, I think this and the Ravens also have Derrick Henry in the backfield, and he's he looks better than he has in his prime this year. He's had one of his career-setting year for himself, and so I have this Ravens team going all the way to the Super Bowl, beating the Chargers in the conference championship, and taking on the Detroit Lions. Why did I say the Detroit Lions? Yes, I agree. The Eagles make it to the conference championship. I think the Lions make it to the conference championship. But this Lions team, I think, is such a well put together team. They're playing for so much this year. I think that their offense is an absolute juggernaut and is going to be an offensive battle. I think this game, and I think that the Lions come out on top. And
Yep,
so my
it's a
Super
fair
Bowl is the
point.
Ravens versus the Lions.
It's a fair point. Again, I think we both agree that that Bills Ravens game is going to be the game likely of the playoffs. And again, as I said, it's likely to decide who comes out of the AFC because I think we both have our cautions with the Chiefs. The Chargers, I don't think the Chargers are going to come close, honestly, just because they have to go to Arrowhead in the middle
But it
to late
doesn't
January.
matter,
But
Arrowhead or not. This
that's
Kansas
just
City
my
offense
personal
isn't
opinion.
good.
Yeah, I mean they haven't been great. They haven't been great, and again, that's why I had the Chiefs losing in the AFC Championship game. And as for the Lions Eagles, again, Dan Campbell. If Dan Campbell knows where the line is with his aggressiveness, I feel better about the Lions. But he needs to show me that he's not too crazy with his aggressiveness. That's the reason why they lost last year for the Niners. He was too over aggressive. He didn't take his points, and that's my big concern and why I have the Eagles being the Lions. Although the way it sounds too, it's like you're trusting Nick Sirianni over Dan Campbell, which sounds ridiculous at this point. But it's great. We're going with the Eagles. Going into our Super Bowl matchup, I have the Buffalo Bills. Finally, I was wrong about this 2 years ago. I had the Bills winning the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I have the Bills winning the Super Bowl again. Josh Allen, as you said, as I've said, he's on a mission this year. I don't think anyone's getting in the way, and he's going to drag this team, whether they like it or not, to a Super Bowl. I have the Bills over the Eagles. I think Nick Sirianni, he got by the Lions, but he's going to do something dumb in the Super Bowl, and I think the Bills are going to wind up beating the Eagles to win their first Super Bowl.
Yeah, look, I'm just not. I just think that this Ravens team is too good, and that's why I think that the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl. I think that all around they're such a well put together team, and I feel like that has a lot to be said. I think going back really quick to the Chargers just signed Ezekiel Elliott to their practice squad. If he ends up joining this roster, don't count him out. I think he might be like the Odell, like what OBJ was for the Rams, and really carrying this Chargers team throughout the playoffs. But I still think that the Ravens beat them in the AFC Championship. And again, I do think that the Ravens win the Super Bowl. I think altogether, they're just such a good, well put together team, and I'm riding their coattails. I'm riding it all the way. Um, and we'll see what happens. I can see the look. Don't get me wrong. I don't think you're stupid in any way for saying that the Bills could make it, not only make it but win the Super Bowl. I think what you just said about Josh Allen is so true that he is on a mission. But I can't bet against the Ravens. Give me the Ravens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And again, too, it's can Lamar Jackson beat the allegations that he crumbles in the playoffs because he's struggled the past couple. Actually, not the past
Yeah,
couple.
yeah. I
Every
mean, he
single
really has.
playoffs that he's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
in, he's had his fair share of struggles. So that's my reason why I had the Bills over the Ravens. But again, we've seen it before. Virginia basketball had the sentiment. They lost to UMBC. This team's never going to win anything. What do? Win the national championship. Purdue, they lose in the first round to a 16 seed. The next year, they make it all the way to the championship. They lose to UConn,
Yeah.
but everyone lost to UConn. So it was okay. Like you still you beat the allegations. So at some point, you'd imagine that the Ravens and Lamar Jackson will beat those allegations. I just think if Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen this year, then I would probably have the Ravens as well winning the Super Bowl, but Josh Allen. So that'll do it, I think. Unless do you want to do quick MVP predictions? I think mine is pretty obvious, but I know you mentioned it earlier. MVP prediction.
Yeah, I mean,
I have
I
Josh
think
Allen.
yeah, it's Josh Allen, right? We agree on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Okay. Good.
I'm torn because Lamar Jackson, what he's done running the ball as well.
Yeah.
I honestly say I'm open to either. If Lamar Jackson gets MVP, I completely understand it. I have Josh Allen slightly edging him out, but to the people who are saying Lamar Jackson has more rushing yards, look how dynamic he is. He's not only one of the top passers, but he's also by far the best quarterback on the run. I completely get it. I completely
Yeah,
agree
no,
with
I
that
think those
sentiment.
people are right, but I also think that those people are just judging by the stats. And if we were to judge by the stats, then Joe Burrow should have won last year, and he should win this year too. Joe Burrow has put up amazing stats. The Bengals just haven't been good, right? So MVP is the most valuable player. And again, Lamar Jackson has Derrick Henry in the backfield. Josh Allen doesn't. Josh Allen is, and so I think Josh Allen hasn't had 1,000 yard back. He hasn't had 1,000 yard wide receiver this season, right? Lamar
Yeah,
Jackson has had both.
100%.
Give
Yeah.
me Josh Allen.
And
All
that's
day.
not even a discount to James Cook. And again, my
It's
thing too,
not.
I had the Bills 10-7 as a wild card team, or they were either winning. I had the Bills, Dolphins, and Jets all 10-7. I remember that. But my
Yeah.
big thing with the Bills was who is catching the ball, and Shakir has really stepped up this year. Amari Cooper's done a great job staying on the bench and getting me 0 fantasy points. So the Bills have really been their weapons have really stepped up this year, and I
Yeah,
mean
and
that
Keon
like getting
Coleman
me
has
his first
played great as
quarter. But
well.
like Shakir has really stepped up, and again, James Cook, not to discount him. Yes, he's not Derrick Henry, but he's been solid too. But yeah, this team is not a formidable and likely like Super Bowl contender without Josh Allen. And I think
Yeah,
that
I
is
100%
the
agree
whole
with that.
point
Yeah.
of MVP. So I think we'll close then on this a little longer, but filled with discussion edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Let us know in the comments, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year? I think just to close, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, the AFC, and then the Lions and Eagles are kind of my teams where I'm just like, those are probably the top teams. But that's for a whole other discussion for another day. We'll see what happens. Some of these predictions are going to age great, like mine last year. Some of them are going to age terribly, like David having the Patriots have more than 5 wins. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the future, no one can predict it, but we'll see what happens. We at least tried our best. So hopefully you enjoyed this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, check out our other videos. Follow us on TikTok too, Benchwarmer_sports. We'll see if TikTok still exists in the next 2 weeks, but who knows what will happen. But in the meantime, you should still follow us on TikTok. So once again, that'll do it for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Enjoy the NFL playoffs and have a good one. See ya.
Peace.